Next up is our Focus on Your Future session with Chris Casper by Regan and with our student officer, Josh Pinder as well. So if you guys are able to turn your cameras and mics on, hopefully.
Hi, Katie.
Hi. And hopefully Chris can turn his camera and mic on as well. It's always that awkward kind of swap over. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Katie. Okay. Hi, Josh.
Hi, Chris.
Thank you.
Okay.
So for the next kind of hour, we'll be chatting with Chris. So if anyone has any questions, just pop them in the chat and you can ask any questions to Chris when Josh will facilitate the Q&A at the end of this session as well. So I'll pass over to you, Josh.
Great. Thanks, Katie. And thanks again to Regan and to Gary for a really good session. So as Katie said, my name's Josh. I work here at UA92. I look after a number of things from the admissions process to accommodation and finance, but I also set up and run the sports team, the football team, along with Regan, who didn't actually mention he's the captain of our football team as well at UA92. So we'll mention that now. But I'm here with Chris Casper. So thanks a lot for joining us, Chris. So for those of you that don't know, Chris was also a member of the class of '92 at Manchester United, played for Manchester United, represented England at under 21 levels, and now is the sporting director at Salford City. So thanks very much for joining us, Chris. How are you? How's lockdown treating you and everything?
Yeah, we've carried on as much as normal, really, Josh. The players have obviously started the season, came back into pre-season as normal. We'd got certain rules that we had to abide by, social distance rules, but apart from that, everything's been much the same, really. The training program, the games program, which is coming thick and fast now with a couple of postponements that we've had earlier on in the year. So yeah, the big thing, the only thing really is there's no fans in the stadium to build the atmosphere, but apart from that, everything's been the same, really.
Great. And you and your family all keeping well as well, and things like that as well?
Yeah, very good, thank you. Yes, my wife works for the NHS. She works for Salford Royal Hospital. So again, she's carried on working, been probably as busy as ever. And my son as well has just gained a scholarship at Burnley in the academy there. So all good thing. It's all been really good. My daughter's carried on with her university work as well. So yeah, we're in good shape.
Brilliant. So Chris is here today to talk to us about obviously all things sort of futures and sporting futures. And Chris has got a really good session. I'm going to ask him a few questions about it, about focusing on your future. So Chris, do you want to tell us a little bit about your background first of all, and then we'll move into the presentation?
Yeah, I come from a sporting background. My dad was a player at Burnley in the 60s and 70s. Unfortunately, I had to finish through injury at the age of 30. And I'm sure we'll come on to it in the near future about my injury as well, and the way that I had to finish as well. But I was a little bit younger than my dad. He went into coaching and managing and managed Burnley and Bury in the 70s and 80s. So I've always been involved in the game in some way. The family has, and it's been in the culture really of the household. So my dad left Burnley in 91. I joined United in 91. So right from as far back as I can remember, there's always, Saturday's always been game day. It's just been that part of the family. That's what's always happened. And, that was the way I was brought up, really.
Great. So we've got a bit of information here. So hopefully I'll be able to move the presentation on a little bit. So you can show us a little bit here. So there's some pictures here that people might recognize. So Chris, do you want to tell us what's going on in some of these pictures here?
Yeah, well, I'll start with the fellow at the top left there, Sir Alex Ferguson. Played a massive part in my career. When I was 14, I signed for Manchester United, signed for 6 years actually. And obviously Manchester United asked you to sign, and I'd got offers to go to other places for trials and things like that, but it was a no-brainer really, even though my dad was still at Burnley and I'm a big Burnley fan. But the professional side of things, it's like I say, when Manchester United come knocking on your door, and he played a big part in it, did Sir Alex. Got to know me, even though I was still only a young lad. Got to know my family. and the other coaches as well were fantastic. Eric Harrison, Nobby Styles, Brian Kidd, later on Jim Ryan as well. They were fantastic people to be around. So, got a lot to be thankful to Sir Alex about. He didn't just shape you as a footballer, he shaped you as a person as well, and give you a guide into your career, your further career, whether that be in football, sport, business, whatever it was, because the values that he taught you and the standards that he taught you and the behaviours would carry on for the rest of your life. So it wasn't just a matter of playing football, it's a matter of actually, developing yourself as a person. So on the top right there, I was captain of England when I was 18. We won the Euro Championships in '93. So along with fellow United lads who was in the same squad, so Scholesy, Nicky Butt and Gary. That was a great achievement, to be fair, and to play in the team that included the likes of Robbie Fowler and Sol Campbell, Julian Joachim, Darren Cascade, some really good players, and was fortunate enough to play in that. Going down to the bottom left, I made my debut for Manchester United against Port Vale in 1994 in the Coca-Cola Cup. And all in all, I made 7 or 8 appearances, including substitute appearances, but it wasn't enough for me, and I needed to get away and build my career. So I was fortunate enough to go on loan to Reading when I was 23. Did well, signed a 3.5-year contract with Reading, who were in the first division at the time, but had just moved into the Majeski Stadium, and I could see the way that the club was going. So it was a no-brainer for me. It was a good contract as well. So, but 14 months later, in a game at Cardiff on Boxing Day 1999, I played in my last game. I was 24. I got badly tackled, badly injured, broke my double leg break, knee damage and ankle damage in the same tackle. So I tried to come back, but one of my bones wouldn't heal, and I ended up having to have a bone graft. I'd been out for 3 years, and I decided I couldn't carry on. It was, my daughter had just been born. I had to do what was right for the family and build another career somewhere, because, like I say, 3 years out, I'd have found it very difficult to have even got any kind of a contract anywhere else. So I had to focus on doing something different within the game, really, because, like I say, right from the start, I've always been involved in football. My family have. So I went into coaching straight away. I was fortunate enough to get a coaching job at Bath University. So I kind of got to know the university life as well a little bit, although I wasn't a student there, I wasn't staying there, but obviously speaking to the lads, and I did a lot of coaching there and got through my level 2 and level 3 quite quickly. So I was on the way to building myself as a coach. And then when I was in 2003, I got offered the youth team job at Bury, so we moved back up north. And 2 years later, the manager of Bury got sacked, Graham Barrow, and I was asked to take the team on an interim basis. Had a couple of good results, changed the team around a little bit, got a few performances out of them. And I found I really enjoyed the job and doing, the coaching side of it and the managing side of it and the responsibility that came with that. So, I went for the interview, and fortunately I was there for 2.5 years as a manager and had some really good times, developed good young players, really settled the club financially, brought good money in with sale of players, progression into FA Cup and cup competitions as well, which was vital for a club like Bury, and left the club in a really stable position, having taken over 4 points adrift at the bottom of League Two. So I was proud of that. And then I had a couple of other jobs, a youth team job at Bradford. And then I was offered a role at the Premier League, which we were just developing the new elite player performance plan, the EPPP. And part of my job was to work with 4 or 5 clubs. Manchester United was one of them, in the development of the new system. Newcastle, Sunderland, Liverpool. And on the bottom right there was part of the job, a great part of the job, to see the young players coming through, and presented Marcus Rashford with his debut ball there, having made his debut earlier on in the year. So that was my career path so far. And then in 2017, obviously Salford City had made the plans well known that they were going to transition from part-time to full-time. And I was offered the role of sporting director, where it was to try and help transition the club from part-time to full-time, and develop the academy, develop the recruitment department, develop the sports science side of things, and basically support the managers as well who were already in there. And been in there 4 years, had 2 promotions in 4 years. Last year we were probably on the verge of another promotion. Obviously COVID kicked in and the season got finished early, so it's obviously a developing club and a role that I really enjoy and thrive on every day, really.
Great. So that's a really interesting career, and obviously what we're talking about here is sort of futures and sporting careers and things like that. So I think this is a really good example of how in a relatively short amount of time a sporting career can take so many sort of twists and turns, some that are forced upon you with the injuries and things, but then some where you've taken an approach yourself and looked at a different route and things like that. So I think it's a really good example. And one of the things that Gary often mentions, and I think you mentioned with Regan earlier, is about Sir Alex and how that work ethic translates into the university, but into general everyday life. And it doesn't have to be in football, for example. It's just that work ethic, and Gary was talking about before, getting up every day and working hard, I think is evident throughout your career here and throughout what Sir Alex instilled in you in the early days. And I think that's a really important thing for young people particularly, but to go with you throughout an entire career. Is that something that stuck with you?
Yeah, definitely. He was the hardest working guy you could wish to meet. The other traits, he was very loyal, he was very trustworthy. There was one time, it was when my dad had just been sacked at Burnley, and he got me in the office. I was only a 16-year-old. It was only the start of the season. It was my first year there full time, and he just got me in the office and just asked me if I was okay and how my dad was. And he was building towards the start of the season, but to take that time out and show that level of support to the people around him, I think I'll never forget that. So it was those, like I say, the values that he instilled in you, the loyalty and the way that you treat people, I think is massively important. And like I say, his will to win as well is, always, you could always tell every single day he wanted to do his best, and that's what I try and instill in the young players now at Salford. Every day, be the best that you can possibly be. And some days you might not be feeling 100%. Some days you might be feeling, a little bit down or whatever, but always try your best. That's all you can ever do. And some people will be more successful than others. Some people are more educationally minded than others. Some people are more business minded than others. Some people are more sports minded than others. It's, don't judge yourself on other people's aspirations and other people's successes. Judge yourself. And the only way you judge yourself is by being the best you can every single day. And honestly, with that, you'll be fine with yourself and you'll be able to live with yourself.
Great. So moving on then, when your playing career and things like that obviously ended, you moved into a different sporting career. So your career, like you said, it is set out here, and there's some faces that people might recognise in this sort of motley crew here. So, as you mentioned before, your football career took you from United through to Reading, and then the youngest manager in the league, and then I think it's actually sporting director, isn't it, at Salford? So, what were the challenges you faced in that career path? And we'll move on to that in a bit more depth later. But just sort of a few things. What did you see as the challenges going into a sporting career?
Well, for a start, it's very competitive. Looking at that team there, you've got some, all the players, every single one of them are really top players, good players. Ben Thornley would have been the best player there. Along with Ryan, probably that, his career got cut short in '94. It got curtailed, should I say. He got a very, very bad injury, but he was probably one of the, if not the best player in the youth team at the time. And, the 91-92 season, definitely. Obviously Nicky, Gary, Simon Davis, gone on to have a really good coaching career for Man City. Kevin Pilkington, really long career in the lower leagues, goalkeeping, and now has got a good goalkeeping coaching career going. Keith Gillespie had a good career at obviously Newcastle and Blackburn and places like that. John O'Kane played for Everton. Robbie Savage he's gone on to have a great career in at Leicester and Blackburn and places like that, and now he's successful in the media. George Switzer. George was an interesting character. He was like the comedian of the group, George. But local lad, Salford lad. And gone on to. He didn't quite make it. I think he had a spell at Darlington, and he was quite unfortunate. He was unfortunate not to get anything else at United, really, I thought. And but gone on to in his own personal career, and he's done well. Obviously, you've got Ryan and David and Colin McKee. Colin went on to play up in Scotland as well. So not just the lads that went on to have careers in football, but other industries as well. A good friend of mine, Carl Brown. Carl wasn't on that picture, but Carl's gone on to have a successful career in business, and Mark Rowlinson. And it's no secret, and it's no coincidence that these lads, when they do go into other careers, that they do so well, and because they've been brought up in the way of Manchester United, really, and led by Sir Alex Ferguson.
Yeah, and you've put on there your personal highlight was your Premier League debut at Spurs live on Sky, and you won 2-1. How did you get on in that game? Did you play well?
Yeah, I did okay. Yeah, I think I came on for Ronnie Johnson after 60 odd minutes, and it was the one where Beck scores the goal from 25 yards into the top corner, and they had some good players in that team. I remember Les Ferdinand in particular being a particular handful, but fortunately we saw the game through. And I played in the League Cup for United, played at Old Trafford and that, but when you're stepping on the pitch in front of the Sky cameras at Tottenham, you realise, you don't think, oh, I've made it, but this is what you want more and more of, and it's the thing that keeps you going back and wants you to carry on working hard every day, because to have those kind of experiences and those that adrenaline, it's what you want as a footballer every single day.
Great. Yeah, so cool. So we're going to move on then. So we've put a few questions together here. So we're going to go through these now. And if anybody's got any questions they want to put to Chris, feel free to use the chat and we'll come to them at the end. So Chris, what would you say one of the biggest challenges of your career has been? And that can be from when you were a young player all the way through to where you are now. What would be one of the biggest challenges of your career so far?
I think there was the biggest challenge personally was the injury. I was 24. It took me, I did well when I first signed for Reading, and then it took me a bit of time to settle into the area. I'd moved down with my wife. I was about to I just got married and things like that. And I'd started to play really well, and to have it, taken away in such a bad fashion, really. The tackle wasn't very good. In fact, it was negligible, and it was difficult to deal with. That you kind of feel a failure, really, because you see all the other lads, and it was the year that the lads had won the treble, and they'd done fantastically well, and and you want to get back to being successful yourself, and when it gets taken away from you like that, physically I tried to come back. Like I say, it was just something that was too much for me, but mentally more than anything, it was a real struggle for me, having to deal with that, through no fault of my own, really, which, if you don't succeed, or you think you've not succeeded and I'll come to it on, further in the presentation about learning fast, failing fast, and learning fast. You're not a failure. You're only a failure when you give in and you stop learning, and if you want to do other things, you must do that. You must do that, because you'll always learn. You're always continuing to learn. But like I say, when it got ended in such a way, through no fault of my own, I found that very difficult. And that was the biggest challenge of my career. There's no question about it.
And how do you think that's, just touching on what you said earlier, how do you think it's changed from, it's not that long ago, 1999, to today? the support for players in positions like that, where, you know, not just the physical support and the physical rehabilitation, but like you touched on there, the mental rehabilitation. How do you think that's changed, and, you know, what's the positive impact of that in not just in football, but in a wider sporting career?
I think the mental side of things is becoming more and more prevalent, and rightly so. There is a lot of help out there. I think the PFA, you know, they get a bit of a bad rap at times. They've always been very supportive of me, but certain times you do need that someone to come and help you, you know, and that as a in everyday life, you know, you're always looking there to reach out to people and help people if you can. And if you know, I was with a player at Reading, he could see I was struggling, and he put me in touch with a psychologist. You know, so I was forever grateful for that. But yeah, there is a lot of support now in every club. We've got a sports psychologist at our club. You know, and he's there on the performance side of things as well. But if someone's struggling on the mental health side of things, I think it's important that they have that support and that someone just to go and speak to. It's, you know, there's a lot of mental health awareness going on these days, and rightly so. Back in my day, there wasn't anywhere near as much. So, you know, it's so important that the people, because not just, you know, when you're coming back from an injury, you'll do the work on the training ground. You know, you'll do the passing drill, you do the football sessions, you'll do the fitness work, you'll do the strength and conditioning sessions. But actually, there's a corner missing, and it's the you know, the mental side of things, which is probably the most important as well in football, one of the biggest factors in football. But like I say, it's a lot more. There's a lot more support out there now, and rightly so.
Great. And we've had a question come in from Beth. So thanks for that, Beth. She said, what do you think is one of the biggest challenges facing young people and graduates these days?
I think sometimes it can be yourself, and can be your own. It can be your own expectations. You know, there's a lot of social media now. There's a lot of exposure to a lot of things, and like I say, sometimes people judge themselves against other people, and it can be detrimental at times. I think the one thing you've got to do as a graduate is be clear on what you want to do. How are you going to get there? And like I said, do the best that you can possibly be. Don't worry about anybody else and what everybody else is doing. You know, and like I said, don't judge yourself against anybody else, because you can guarantee that someone will come on Facebook or Twitter, or I've done this, I've done that, and all of a sudden you think, you know, why am I not doing that? And you should never ever do that. So long as you can do your best and challenge yourself to be the best you can be every day, ignore that. And, you know, growing up, we never had that. We never had that pressure. There was no social media around and very little media coverage. We were just allowed to get on with our careers. But, you know, I think now that can be quite dangerous at times. You know, and like I say, I think the most important thing as a graduate, you've got to make sure that you've got a clear pathway and you're clear in what you want to. And do you know what? You might not be clear. You might have 2 or 3 options, and you still might think, I don't know what I want to do. You know, what am I going to do in the future? But if you have a plan and say, well, okay, if I'm going to do this, I've got to study with, you know, this education program. If I'm going to do that, then I'm going to study these qualifications, etc. So have a base and have a structure and a, you know, a bit of a plan for what you want to do moving forward.
Great. We've had another couple of questions come in, so we will get to those later, but we'll just move on for now. So following on from that then, what would you say, sorry, just having a bit of a technical issue here, so hopefully this screen will move on to the next question. There we go. So what would you say, Chris, are the key skills that you would need for the sporting industry? And again, that can be in any role across the sporting industry. Are there you know, 2 or 3 key skills that stand out for you?
Yeah, I think one of the key skills I think you need to have is empathy with people. You know, because like I say, you've got to understand that you know, sport, you know, is an emotional sport. there are different characters involved in it. There'll be different personalities, and you'll have to deal with all these different personalities and understanding that, you know, people for whatever reason don't perform, and you've got to understand, have a level of understanding and empathy with people that, you know, get to know people. That's the big thing, and what makes them tick. What do they enjoy doing, and why would they want to work with you? And, you know, that's part of leadership. And I think the other thing, one of the main, probably the main key skill is communication. I think you've got to be clear in your communication, you know, and that might be right from the start when you've got a job interview. Be prepared, and I think those are the fundamentals really. And I think if you've got those in place, the other, I wouldn't say the frilly bits on the outside, but those real solid basics of real good leadership will definitely hold you in good stead.
Great. And do you think those kind of things are sort of typical across the whole sporting industry, whether it's a role in sporting media or performance or coaching and things like that? Do you think those fundamentals sort of go right through everything, really, sort of the backbone of the entire industry?
Yeah, I do, whether that's in sport or in business or in education or military or whatever that is. I think being clear with your message, and having and building those relationships, and like I say, through understanding people and working with people and having empathy with people, building those relationships, building that trust, and obviously having the motivation yourself as well. And people say, well, who motivates the motivator? Well, you've got to sometimes motivate yourself, and that's a key skill in itself. And like I say, the most important thing is you get up every single day and be the best that you can. And I think, like I say, if you've got those other basics in place, you'll be going on the right way. I think if you can't get on with people, and you know, you don't take things personally. Other people, there are different characters out there. You know, I've learned that along my career, that not everybody's the same, and not everybody's got the same standards as yourself. And sometimes there's nothing you can do about that, and you've got to work with people like that as well. So it's having an understanding and, you know, being flexible in the way that you work with people, but definitely being clear with communication is really, really important.
Great. One thing I want to pick up on there, Chris, is say about motivation, a bit of a personal question, but how do you keep yourself motivated, particularly at the minute where obviously the world's very different to what we all know it as? How do you keep yourself motivated?
I enjoy I'm fortunate. I enjoy what I do every day. So, you know, I think it comes right from my parents, really. You know, my mum was, she never pushed me into anything, but if I did something, she always expected me to do my best. Never any pressure on me, but that was just expected, you know, and my dad was the same. And then obviously working with Sir Alex, that's what motivates you every single day, and enjoying what you're doing, challenging yourself. And that's I think what you've got to realize is, at the end of the day, if you haven't tried your best, then that's one heck of a bad feeling, I would imagine. So you kind of motivate yourself to stop yourself feeling that way as well. So I think it's just a trait that you've got, whatever you want to do, whatever, and you know, trying your best doesn't mean to say that you work, you know, you flat out every single day, and you know, you end up at the end of the day and you're absolutely shattered. Trying your, you know, being motivated is looking after yourself both physically and mentally as well. And it might be that you take some time off to look after yourself physically as well, and go for a run or do some gym work or go on the bike, because that's making you better. You're performing better, and you perform at higher levels when you've exercised and you're feeling in a good place. So don't think that you've got to get your head down from 7 o'clock in the morning to 7 o'clock at night. It's actually structuring the way in you know, the way that you work in your day, and taking some time to look after yourself, because sometimes that doesn't always, you know, some people don't always realize that you know, they're looking after other people, making sure other people are okay, but actually you've got to look after yourself as well.
Yeah, I think it's no coincidence that Gary in his interview with Regan earlier said a very similar thing, that he works hard when he works hard, but he always makes sure he keeps a day in his diary a week free just for himself. And I think it's no coincidence that you've got, yourself and Gary, two very successful people in the sporting careers, sporting industry, that have both said similar things about it's so important to, give yourself that time. And like you said, that is a part of working hard, that kind of switching off kind of thing. And like you said earlier, these days it can be very hard, I imagine, with computers and social media and things. So what is it that you like to do when you have a bit of downtime?
There's a couple of things. Me myself, I like to get out on the roads. I ran a couple of marathons a few years ago, and
very casually put that, Chris. You just ran a couple of marathons.
Yeah, became obsessed with it really. I really enjoyed it, and I've carried on not running the same amount of distances, but try and 5 days out of 7, try and get some kind of exercise in. Even if it's half an hour, 40 minutes, whatever that is, you've got to try and take care of yourself on that side of it. Not only does it make you feel better, but mentally as well, it's good for you, and just to get away from things, because you're always on the end of a phone. You've got text now, you've got WhatsApps, you've got email, all on your phone. And sometimes just leave your phone at home. But if it's that drastic, I'm sure something would have already happened, and people will be able to contact you. If people can't contact you for half an hour, it's not the end of the earth, So that's one thing. And the other thing as well, I love for my family. Love spending time with my family. And like I said before, my son signed a scholarship that starts in July. I love watching him train and play. That gives me a lot of satisfaction, that, and he's done ever so well, because he's shown some real resilience. And again, it's another key skill, is showing that resilience. He's a goalkeeper, and he broke a couple of fingers last year, and obviously for a goalkeeper, it's not a great injury. And he broke one finger, came back from that 7 weeks later, and then broke another finger, and then played another game, and then lockdown came. So in a year, he'd hardly played. So to come back in September and hit the ground running, and he'd worked hard throughout lockdown, he trained hard, and he's got his reward so far. And I really enjoy watching him develop and progress. And we're good mates. We're both Burnley fans, and enjoy watching the team and whatever. But yeah, that's how I.
And how would you sum up Burnley's season so far? Decent result last night.
Yeah, no, they're doing great. Sean Dyche has done a fantastic job, and they always say, and rightly so, he's not spent an awful lot of money, but the squad that he's got are very competitive, very organised, very fit, and he gets the best out of his players. And not everybody's got a Man City squad or a Liverpool squad, or it doesn't mean to say that Sean Dyche is any worse of a manager than the managers of those clubs. He actually gets the best out of his players, which, again, as a manager and a leader, is a fantastic skill to have.
Great. So moving on then. So the next question we wanted to put to you on here is: are there any negative aspects or misconceptions about your job?
I think again, mentioned it before, I think the public nature of the job, sometimes, and I was 30 when I was manager of Bury, and still very inexperienced, and it's very public. You're on the back pages of the local press every day, really. Sometimes you're always looking for a quote from you, and it can be quite intrusive. People, if you're out in the street, might want to stop and have a chat. There's nothing wrong with that, but there is that openness to the job that it's all over the media, the social media, and and if you are a private person, I am a private person, that it's not always glamorous. It's not always as as glamorous as some people might make out it to be, and there are really, really good aspects to it. And I wouldn't change anything in my career, obviously the injury, but whatever I've done, whatever I've decided to do, I'd never make any other choices rather than what I've already done. So but it can be it can be volatile as well. The average man, I think one of my few successes was to be higher than the average life tenure of a manager. I think it's about 18 months or 16 months. I had 2.5 years, and so that's quite a success for me, I suppose. But it can be volatile, and we were in a good position at Bury, and for some reason, we'd had a couple of bad results, but we were in the third round of the FA Cup in a replay. We'd drawn at Norwich, who were in the Championship at the time. So it was a good result. We'd earned a lot of money. There was 20,000 odd at Norwich, so we get the gate receipts as well. We lost on the following Saturday to Darlington. And then on the Monday, we'd got the replay on the Tuesday. I'd done all the press, prepared the team for the game on the Tuesday. And obviously it was a really high profile game for the club. We'd not been in the third round of the Cup for 7 years. And I got brought into the boardroom and was told I was relieved of my duties, which came as a bit of a shock, really. And I'd say after all the preparation that I'd done for the game, and fortunate the lads went out and won the game as well, which I was proud of them for doing that. So, but it can be volatile and it can be very uncertain at times.
And how do you keep your cool, basically, and keep your focus in situations like that? Where it can, at any minute things can, like you said, be completely different from what they were. How do you keep your cool? How do you keep your focus in a career like that?
It can be tough, and sometimes in certain situations, there's nothing wrong with losing your temper. In the right way, so long as it's done for the right reasons. And having that. People call it passion. You can call it what you like, but you're a human as well, and it's you can try and be as good a role model as possible. But I'm competitive. Obviously, as a footballer, you've got, as a defender especially, you've got to be aggressive in your nature. Off the pitch, I was pretty placid, to be fair, but certain situations, certain times, you do lose your temper and you lose your cool. But you've got to try and keep that as much as possible. And you'll get bad decisions go against you. You'll get something that you think's unfair go against you, and it's dealing with that and dealing with that emotion. I think that shows your real true qualities as a leader as well, because you look at the top leaders, they've not got there just by sort of, you could say, successful people, whatever. Success is never linear. It's never straightforward. There'll be pitfalls. There'll be bad times, and it's how you bounce back. And again, showing that resilience, I think, is really, really important. But yeah, trying to keep you cool, I think, is it can be tough at times, and it's a passionate business, and sometimes it does spill over. And I suppose that's what makes football so interesting and exciting at times as well.
Absolutely, and I think that goes for any career in any sport or any other industry, really. There's always going to be something that can really, maybe push you to the edge, and it's how you react, like you said, and how you use that and channel that energy to come back the next day and go again, really. So great, thanks, Chris. So why, simple question, basically, why, let's go back to that second one. Why do you love what you do? What is it about what you do that makes you love it?
I think, sorry, it's all right. I think it's because it's so exciting. It's a passion of mine. Football's a passion of mine. I genuinely love football. I think it's what I've been brought up with, and it's always been in my family, as I said before. So I think when you do have a career and you do decide to do something, and it might be different. It might be, you might have an interest in, I don't know, it might be cars, it might be flying aeroplanes, it might be hairdressing, it might be, being an actor, an artist, whatever it is, a musician. Do something that you enjoy doing, because if you don't, you'll never be happy. And you'll always think, what if, and there's nothing worse than that. So do something that you enjoy doing and make a career out of that. And just because other people might have a conception that you should be doing something else, and forget that. Do what you enjoy doing, and you'll enjoy it far more. You'll be, keep using the word success, and success is difficult to measure only in yourself. And if you can be the best that you can be in what you enjoy doing, I'm sure you'll be happy in your career. There's no question about that. So, like I said, that's why I love football. It's exciting. I enjoy it. It's emotional. And as a coach and a manager, I enjoy seeing young people have an opportunity to better themselves, and being part of that journey and helping them. Premier League players who I've worked with: Kasper Schmeichel, Mark Pugh, who was at Bournemouth, Dale Stephens, who's at Burnley now, he played in the Premier League for Brighton, and Nicky Adams in the lower leagues, David Buchanan. It's been a pleasure to see them develop as people, but also as players as well, and going to have great careers, 500-600 games. So that's why I enjoy doing what I'm doing, and hopefully that'll continue.
Great. And am I right in thinking you gave Kasper Schmeichel his debut, didn't you, in professional football?
I think he played 3 or 4 games for Darlington on loan, right. And then got sent back. And again, he was only a 19-year-old kid at Man City, and taking a young lad on loan and put them into a relegation battle when we were struggling in that first season, because we had to. The nature of the game at Bury is you have to sell your best player, and in January we had to sell Simon Whaley to Preston, and Simon was our main goal scorer. And after that, the team lost. They lost a bit of confidence, really, and that it had an impact on us. So bringing Kasper into a highly pressurised situation, like I say, as a young lad, was a big call, really. But as soon as you saw him on the training ground, as soon as you met him, you got that confidence about him, that aura about him that his dad had as well. And he was fantastic for us. He really was, and got on to have a brilliant career.
Great. But a really good question come in, actually, that I wanted to put to you now, Chris, and it kind of touched on what we said earlier. So you say obviously you love what you do, and that's the football side of things. But someone's asked here, Oliver's asked, if it wasn't football or sports in general, what career would you think you might have ended up going towards?
It's a really good question. I've always enjoyed travel. I enjoy traveling. So it might have been in that industry. Whether that would be. I've always been interested in people that have worked abroad and how they manage that. And I think working abroad in some way, if it wasn't in football, what would it be? I genuinely don't know. All my life I've just focused on being a footballer, being a coach, being a manager, working in football. But like I say, I do enjoy travel, and I know it might have been a pilot or something like that. It's a bit out there, but why not? I'm fascinated by things like that, and again, it would have been something that I'd have enjoyed doing. And all my education has gone into educating myself into the football side of things. But yeah, that would have been interesting to have done that. I enjoy education. I enjoy teaching as well. Doing coach education is really enjoyable for me, and helping young coaches out and developing young coaches. But in another subject, it could well have been as well. So I said teaching, learning, I think's fascinating for me as well.
Great. Okay, so we'll move on then. So with ongoing competition, what is something that you think will help students stand out from the crowd? So what's going to make them head and shoulders above the next person?
I think being prepared, I think, is really important. I think qualifying yourself and educating yourself to as high a standard as possible, I think's massively important, whether that be formally or informally as well. And obviously the university, I'm currently doing a master's degree in sporting directorship at the minute, at Salford University, and I think improving yourself all the time's, absolutely critical. But it's not just the formal education as well. I think it's going out there, and if you can learn things actually as they happen in the practical side of things in industry, going on work experience, for example, visiting other, for a coach, it might be visiting other clubs or visiting other sports, or actually being a bit diverse and learning from, learning from the military or learning from the arts. When I was at the Premier League, I did a coach education program, and obviously we looked at other football clubs. We brought Athletic Bilbao across and Barcelona, and they educated our coaches on days, where we got all the coaches from the Premier League together in the youth department. But actually, with some really powerful stuff came from work that we did with military, with education. So there's a guy called Sir Paul Grant who's done a lot for trying to think of the school down in Dagenham, but took a really underperforming school and made it into a fantastic school in a tough area, to be fair. So we looked at how we did that, how they actually function on a day-to-day basis. We did some work with the Royal Shakespeare Company. And actually, what we found was that the characteristics and the traits of all these elite environments were very, very similar. Whether it's Manchester United, whether it's Royal Shakespeare Company, whether it's the Royal Military Police, whether it's a top education environment, it's all about standards and values and character, and the way that people treat people, the way that people behave, they talk to people, they communicate, and the standards they expect. And that's something that I'll always take with me forward, that it doesn't matter if it's football or sport or business or military or the arts, whatever it is, the characteristics and the fundamentals don't change.
Great, and I think that's something the other lads from the class of 92 behind UA 92 always say, that their education is what they've tried to bring into UA 92, and it just so happens that their sort of subject, as you were, like you said, was football. But like you said, the ethics and the values and the morals, those fundamentals are the same behind it, and that's obviously what they try and put into the courses at UA 92 and things like that. So that's really good. Thanks, Chris. So before we move on to some top tips, we've just had a couple of questions come in, which I will put to you if that's all right. So we've got here a question from Manu. And Manu says, it was sort of when we were talking about coming back from the injury and things like that before, have you got any examples of coping mechanisms you use, or any particular ways that you cope with things like that and uncomfortable scenarios and situations?
Yeah, I think the first thing to do is take a deep breath and step back, and don't think that you have to react to something straight away. Have a plan on how you're going to actually react to it, and it might be that if something does occur or something does happen, right? Okay, I think it's important that you compose yourself. How are you actually going to deal with that situation? And like I say, take a deep breath sometimes and just take a step back. I think that's one of my key coping mechanisms. Go for a walk, just get your head together, clear your head. You might have an issue with a player, or something's come up with an agent, or something like that you've got to deal with. Instead of jumping straight in, just take a little bit of time, compose yourself, have a plan on what you're going to say, how are you going to act, how are you going to behave, and that's how I deal with things, basically.
Great. And then that leads us nicely onto a question that's coming from Tom. And again, it's about the same sort of subject, and it's about how you recover from something mentally when what's happened is completely out of your control. There's nothing you could have done differently at the time. So, how do you get your head around that sort of acceptance of that and go from there, really?
It's something that that took a lot of time, to be fair, Josh. There's a lot of anger in me, a lot of guilt on my behalf, to think, this was my fault, when it clearly wasn't. but you kind of say, you're saying to yourself, well, why did I put myself into that position? You've let yourself down, you've let your family down. And you kind of beat yourself up for quite a long time. And no matter what anybody says to you, it's never going to help. I got to a stage where I just had to, just sat myself down and said, right, where am I going with this? Because it was having an effect on me. At the end of the day, what you look at, and what I would suggest is that you're dealt a hand in life. Not everybody's as privileged as other people. Not everybody's, I felt, the worst day of my life was when my mum died. And I was so angry that, why should that have happened to me? And it happens to everybody, it happens to so many people. But I felt that the way that it happened, and, I just felt so angry that it should happen like that. But actually, with that incident and with, like I say, with the injury, what I came to was that you dealt a hand, and it's how you actually play your hand. And that's life. You're never going to be able to change that. I can't change what's happened in the past. The only thing I can affect now is the future. So if I dwell on it and it carries on beating me up and beating me up, that is going to defeat me, and I'm not going to be defeated. So I've got to deal. I've got a pretty bad hand I've got to play at this moment in time. It's how I actually play this hand, and those are the cards that I've been dealt, and I've got to deal with that.
Yeah,
and that's what I eventually came to, that life's not fair. Yeah. Life's not fair. Let's be clear here. Like I said, the day my mum died, it wasn't fair. And people listening to this will have their own circumstances, and they'll go, well, that wasn't right. That's not fair. That's not fair. And life's not fair. If you expect it to be, you're in for a big shock.
Yeah.
The way you can affect it is by, like I say, I keep on saying it, doing your best. That's all you can do. Try your best every single day and be the best that you can possibly be, and play that hand the best that you can possibly play it.
Great. Thank you so much for opening up about that, because I know obviously it must be a difficult topic for you to talk about, and I think that's what people, they're the things that can really help inspire people, is how you come through those darker periods and things like that. So thanks very much for that, Chris. Really appreciate that. So in terms of some top tips then, so you've put together a few top tips that you think will help people in the sort of the sporting industry. So if I can get these slides to move on like that. So these are 3 top tips you've put together there. You've got educate yourself formally, educate yourself informally, and then fail fast, learn fast, and improve fast. So can you just tell us, you touched on it before, what do you mean by educating yourself formally and informally?
Yeah, I'd say qualify yourself to the as best you can, really, in the subject that or the subjects that's going to help you to. It's kind of like currency, really. Sometimes is our qualifications, because sometimes you can't get through a door if with recruitment agencies and things like that. Now, if you've not, it doesn't make the difference how experienced you are or how strong your CV is. If you've not got qualifications, you don't actually get past the first hurdle. So I think educating yourself is massively important, and not just for the qualification at the end of it, for the learning that takes place and the experiences that take place.
Yeah,
like I say, the informal stuff is the stuff that you could actually look at yourself and say, well, you could do you could do a competency framework of yourself, and actually, what do I need to what do I need in my skill set and my education to be able to do the job that I'm looking to do, and gain more knowledge in that area. And it might not be that on the formal pathway that you get as much knowledge that you might need. So actually, like I say, researching it, going visiting certain establishments. If you want to be a chef, for example, I'm sure there are education programs out there that'll teach you how to be a chef. But actually, if you spent 2 weeks in a Gordon Ramsay kitchen, I'm saying Gordon Ramsay, any kitchen, you spent 2 weeks in a kitchen, I'm sure you will learn as much, if not more, about the role of being a chef than you might do through the formal pathway. So those are the things that you like I say, you might look at how you can improve yourself, what kind of knowledge that you can gain that you might not be gaining with the formal stuff. And I think that's always a motto that, you know, you fail fast, and you will fail. You think you'll fail. You don't succeed, and you know, you don't hit your, you know, the marks that you need to, or whatever it is. But you fail fast, you learn fast. So as soon as you've, you know, not hit that, you know, you've not hit that mark, or you've not got to where you've wanted to get to so far, then learn from it quickly. So you fail fast, learn fast, and improve fast. So learn. So you know, you've not been successful so far, and I use the words "so far" because failure is only when you give in. So failure so far, you learn from it quickly, and you move on, and you improve on the areas that you need to fast. And that's a motto that, you know, I've always stood by. Really, I think, you know, if you get something wrong, and I've got loads and hundreds of things wrong, you know, if you don't learn from it, then it becomes a mistake. If you learn from it, it's education, and you'll improve yourself on it, because mistakes are a good way to learn, so long as you learn from them quickly.
I really like that. I like that kind of, if you don't learn from it, it's a mistake. If you do, then it's an education. I think that's a really good message to take away. And again, like I've said so through this interview so many times, that applies to, yes, obviously to football, but then to this wider sport and just every sort of industry, really. That's a kind of a really good point. So has anyone got now at any point any questions for Chris? Because we're coming towards the end. We've got a couple more bits now. So if you've got any questions, get them in the chat now. But Chris, if somebody said to you, where do I start? If I wanted to get into football or sports management or the sporting industry, what would you say where to start?
As I put there, I think you have to have an idea on what you want to do. You know, it might not be a really clear idea at this moment in time, but, you know, have an idea on what interests you and why you would be actually suited to be that, you know, to be that in that role, should I say. And start simple, start basic. You know, don't try and take the world on right from the start. And if you want to be a football coach, don't think you're going to be a coach in Man City in 2 years' time, because you've got to be realistic. You know, I know Regan's, you know, the coach in the university team and that, and whether he aspires to be a professional coach in the future. But that's where I started. I started at university. I started coaching a university team, doing my level 2 coaching badge. And I was fortunate that I'd got a football background, etc., blah, blah, blah. But I think if you can start simple and start with the basics, you know, there's this thing that came out years ago. Clive Woodward came out with it, I think, and David Brailsford, about, you know, the marginal gains. But they were at an absolute elite end of the sport. Start with the basics, and I'd call them brilliant basics. Get the basics brilliant. You know, get your understanding, get your messages clear and simple, and have a backup as well. Have something in mind that, you know, if things don't quite work out as you want them to, and there's nothing wrong with changing your mind and going in a different direction and having something else to fall back on. I was fortunate that, you know, in my career, that from the age of 14, you know, I had a meeting with the careers officer at my school. It lasted about 10 seconds because I'd already signed a contract and agreed a contract at United.
Probably one of his easier appointments there.
Yeah. But my backup was to make sure that I got all my GCSEs. I did 9 at the time and passed all 9. You know, so if something had happened in my career, which obviously did, and I was fortunate that I'd already started to do my coaching badges. When we were in the youth team at United, because we were in the Youth Cup final, you always had to do, it used to be called the preliminary badge, the FA preliminary badge. And all the apprentices used to have to do it, but because we were right at the end of the season, we just didn't have time to do it. I went back, it was either the following season or the season after, with, you know, I was a pro at the time. Might have even made my debut by then, but I went back with the group of scholars, the 17-year-olds, and did my prelim badge. So I'd already started having a backup for myself. So I think that's important as well.
Yeah, and I think touching on what you said there, it links as well, again, back to what Regan and Gary said before. There's loads of free stuff out there in terms of resources and you know, basics for coaching, whether that's in football or cricket or basketball or whatever. There's loads of really good resources out there, and especially at a time like this where things aren't all up and running and everything like that, there's still loads of good online resources and things like that. So do you think it's important to make the most of those things while obviously we kind of wait for the world to get back to a bit more normality?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, through, you know, all the resources online, and, you know, you can Google loads of stuff, and YouTube and things like that. There's so many things that, you know, you can take from the experts and look, you know, have a look at how they do things. And I'm sure that the messages will be clear. And, you know, there was a famous basketball coach, John Wooden, who took a group of average players really, and basically took the NBA on and did a fantastic job. You know, there's loads of messages that you know, you could learn from different sports, and like I say, different business, education, military, all these kind of things, and have a look at what the experts say, because I'm sure it will actually come to the same not so much the same outcome, but there's very similar messages all the time about being the best, keep it simple, those kind of things, and communication as well.
I think there's a reason, like you said, that so many experts say the same things, because it's true and it works, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Great. So lastly then, like I said, if anybody has got any questions for Chris, if you want to put them in the chat now, but I think, Chris, that's covered a whole load of stuff for people that are interested in a sporting career, which is great. So thank you so much for your time, Chris. We've kind of answered the questions along the way that have come in, which is great. So yeah, Chris, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And I'm sure that all the people watching are interested in a career in sport, whether that is in the business side or the playing side or anything like that. I've been able to take something away from that today. So thanks very much, Chris. We hope to see you at UA92 at some point soon. You have to come down and give us some tips with the football team for next season, hopefully. So yeah, that's great. So thanks a lot, Chris.
Thank you.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks, Katie. Good luck, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. So brilliant interview, Josh. Thank you so much. And it was really interesting to hear kind of Chris's career highlights and backstory and those top tips as well. So that kind of rounds up our AM sports sessions. So obviously we've had our focus on your future sessions and our UA92 interviews, Gary Neville as well.